It's episode 5 time, and what might be our most divisive episode so far, at least with the data from the Mega Smash Poll Ultimate. We've done characters, stages, and items, and if you haven't seen them, I suggest you go back and watch those videos, because this time we are going to be looking at the modes of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Effectively, everything that was left in the base game, highlighting thoughts on new modes specifically, and changes made to returning ones. Before we do that, however, in the last episode we asked you to predict which 2 Pokemon received 0 votes, and the answer to that question is Inkay and Swirlix. Both are Gen 6 Pokemon, and honestly, we reckon most people just forgot they were even in the game, even if both have pretty decent abilities. Anyway, because modes covers such a broad topic, we're going to split this into 3 sections: offline modes, online modes, and then spirits. But first, let's take a look at every mode and see how they stand up against one another. We pulled out 10 modes that this game has and asked people to tell us their favourite one to play, and the results are interesting, at least in the lower sections. Local Versus was unsurprisingly the highest rated mode at 31.6%, followed by Classic Mode at 14.93%, and then Online Versus at 13.94%. But the lowest rated mode was Stadium at 1.39%, followed by Tournament Mode at 1.88%. I suppose it is niche, but Tournament Mode was one of the big features people wanted back after it was cut in Smash 4, yet it's not rated particularly highly here. One mode that was rated highly, however, was Squad Strike, a new versus mode where players make teams of fighters and the characters swap out every time a stock is lost. This came just after Online with 11.66%, beating out the World of Light and Spirit battles. When breaking down the Squad Strike results, we asked players if they enjoyed Squad Strike or not, or if they were ambivalent to it, and the vast majority enjoyed it at 73.56%. In fact, only 1.74% didn't enjoy the mode, so we would say that is certainly a win. We also asked this about Smashdown, the other new versus mode where players keep fighting until all the fighters on the roster are gone. This mode wasn't as popular or enjoyed as much as Squad Strike was, being the favourite mode of only 4.32% of players and enjoyed by 58.98%. Still, that's a majority, and rather than dislikes, more players were just ambivalent to the mode at 38.29%, so we would still call its inclusion here a success. Something that was not quite as successful this time around, however, was All-Star Mode. In Ultimate, All-Star Mode was greatly simplified, effectively becoming another take on the 100-man Smash mode found in Stadium. Instead of generic Miis, it goes through the whole roster. When asked if players preferred this system, only 30.06% said that they did. 69.94% preferred the All-Star mode used in prior games, where it felt more like Classic mode and had rewards for completing it. Speaking of Classic mode, let's turn the rest of our attention in this section to that. It is the second most popular mode after all, and in every single Super Smash Bros. Game, it has been changed in some way or another. In Ultimate, the way it was done this time was to give every character their own unique route, with predetermined battles and match gimmicks usually as a reference to their home game. Unlike All-Star Mode, the vast majority of players prefer this, with 85.12% liking this approach over prior ones. All of the reasons players enjoyed this mode were the appreciation of the tailored and themed routes, all offering slightly different experiences. It made playing through them all for the first time fun. That said, Classic Mode had its criticisms as well. Some players dislike the wagering system for the difficulty, a feature also present in Smash 4, and others wanted to see more bonus games included. We actually had an entirely separate question about minigames in Classic Mode, with 84.82% of players claiming that they missed them. But the biggest complaint folks have about Classic Mode, even coming from those who like it, was that they wish there was an option for a random variation. These unique routes are fun to play the first time around, but the mode lacks replayability, and for some characters like Ryu and Sephiroth, their runs are incredibly gimmicky and not always enjoyable. It seems like having these themed routes, but also having an option to just have a random Classic Mode, is the way forward for most players. Alright, let's plug in our Wi-Fi and talk about the controversial online mode of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. One of the first questions we wanted to ask you all is whether you were satisfied with the online here, and unlike all the satisfaction questions we've asked previously, this one was more spread out across the whole spectrum. The highest was actually right in the middle, with 17.16% giving online mode a 5 out of 10. 10.52% gave it a completely unsatisfactory rating of 1 out of 10, while only 1.39% were completely satisfied with the results. So it's definitely leaning a bit more negatively, and we wanted to know why, beyond just the quality of the connection, which varies by region. Is there a problem with how online is set up? Well, that seems to be the case. When asked what players preferred, this system or the for fun, for glory system of Smash 4, 62.95% of players chose the latter. This intrinsically ties into players' thoughts around Elite Smash, which was somewhat divisive, but mostly negative, and a few common criticisms might explain why. Many said the idea was good on paper, being a way to ensure players will always find a match, but poor in execution as the penalty for losing is so strict, and the way experience scales, receiving less of it the more matches you play, means it can be very luck-based. Some players can win 2 matches with a character and immediately find themselves in Elite Smash, while others play 20 matches, losing some and winning others, and find themselves grinding hard to reach it. And given Elite Smash is where all the competitive players want to be really, because the rule set it uses is one they want, it can mean competitive players really do struggle to find matches that they actually want to participate in online. Many would prefer just to have a ranked mode and a casual mode like other fighting games do. On the topic of other fighting games, we asked about rollback netcode, something becoming commonplace in the industry and something that was passed over for Super Smash Bros. Now, the reason it was skipped makes sense. There are so many random factors in Super Smash Bros. Online that it would be impossible for rollback netcode to predict them all and still offer a good quality connection. So we asked fans whether they would be fine with rollback netcode if it meant limiting the online mode. Not allowing every stage, not allowing items, keeping the number of players per match is decreased, etc. Basically, trying to keep the randomness to a minimum. And 52.48% of players said that they would be fine with this limitation placed on the game. Meanwhile, 37.45% were unsure, and it would depend on how extreme the limitation placed is. Only 10.07% were outright against this. Now, let's move on to the final section of this episode, the spirits. Spirits were the replacement for trophies in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, acting a lot more like stickers from Brawl. By moving to simple PNGs over 3D models, it allowed Super Smash Bros. To cover a wider girth of Nintendo history, and just offer more collectibles, as spirits are easier to make and implement into the game than trophies are. Despite that, 64.29% of respondents wanted to see trophies return, and would have preferred them to spirits. It's clear that most players only use spirits as collectibles, as only 21.92% of players actually use them in battle, outside of their designated mode of course. Honestly, that's more than we expected, but still only roughly 1/5 of all players. Something else spirits replaced were the event mode matches. Spirit battles now offered the gimmicky matches with specific rules that had to be followed to win, and when we asked you all if you preferred this to just having a classic event mode, the results were extremely split. 50.05% of players preferred to have spirit battles, while 49.95% of players wanted the classic event mode to return. That is a difference of 0.1%, which is wild. Spirits also tied quite heavily into this game's story mode, the World of Light. Effectively, event mode if the events were split across a map and you had to recruit characters to use them. It's a novel idea, and from our results, most players at least enjoyed it. 36.71% of players liked the World of Light, and 14.63% loved it, with 32.49% being somewhat indifferent to it. Only 10.47% of players didn't enjoy it, with 5.7% really disliking it. A big part of this mode's enjoyment might have been down to the bosses, as this was the mode to play against them. We did ask if players would have liked to have seen a boss rush mode, and 90.13% of them did. So to wrap this video up, let's look at the top 5 bosses out of the 9 in the game. Although, if you want to see where every boss is placed, you can just follow the link in the description to our website, where all of these results are listed. We can't have one of these videos without some kind of list, can we? It's the classic duo Master Hand and Crazy Hand. We bundled these two together because they are basically the same, and in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate they appear more frequently together than separate, so we think this is how the boss fight was intended. As long as Super Smash Bros. Is around, they will be around, and that is fine by us. The monstrous form of the Zelda series villain, Ganondorf. Ganon is almost as iconic as Bowser in terms of Nintendo's big bad bosses, and it's honestly a surprise that he hadn't been made a boss in a previous Smash Bros. Title. His Twilight Princess incarnation was used in both Brawl and Smash 4 as a part of Ganondorf's final Smash, but now with the redesign, the trident-wielding Ocarina of Time variant made its debut, and probably made for a cooler boss fight to make. The iconic monster of the Monster Hunter series, this wyvern makes a lot of sense as a boss in Smash. After all, the Monster Hunter games are just a series of boss hunting games, so representing that here in Super Smash Bros. Is a perfect choice. Rathalos also shows up as an assist trophy, and is one of the best in the game, so that might have made him more popular here. What is a boss but a powerful and cool encounter? Dracula is an iconic villain in all of media, and the recurring head honcho of the Castlevania series. Taking on his appearance from the Richter years, the Dracula boss fight here is a perfect representation of the battle from its home series. Dracula warps around the map using projectiles to fend off those who dare challenge him, and when the first health bar depletes, it's time for his monster form to make its appearance. Is it the juxtaposition between cute and creepy? Is it the loyalty to his series roots? Or is it just that good of a boss fight? Whatever the reason, the final villain of Kirby Superstar, Marx, takes the #1 spot. This little menace was a surprising, but also not so surprising, choice for a boss in the game, and from his wide moveset variety and great animation, it's easy to see why he was such a memorable and popular boss battle in Ultimate. Alright, and that wraps up episode 5. The next episode will finally conclude everything that was in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, as we will be taking a look at all the DLC content that was added over the 2 years since release, from characters to stages to Miis to modes. It's probably going to be a long one, so we hope you'll look forward to it. If you're a patron, you can watch it right now. Just head over to patreon.com and you can find a link to the episode there. For everyone else, the video will be up on YouTube when the next one in the series is ready. Don't miss out by hitting that subscribe button so that you can always remember to return to the source.